look into the diverse life of the Druze population in the region. We will try to get answers to important questions surrounding the Druze mystery of religion, their unconventional perception of nationality, and their belief in reincarnation. But before we get going, here's a short introduction into who the Druze really are by I-24 News' Lauren Iso.
You don't become Druze. You're either born Druze or you'll never be one. And if joining the community is impossible, leaving is not any easier. The Druze religion was founded by two Ismaili Muslims, a Persian man and a Turkish one, Mohammed ad-Razi, from which the term Druze originated. It's a trend of Islam known as al-Muwahidun or Bani Ma'aruf. A silent minority, a philosophic doctrine, an esoteric religion. The Druze community cultivates its mystery. Druze are not proselytes. They believe in reincarnation and respect marital faithfulness. So who are they? The Druze are a community spread out in South Lebanon, southern Syria, and northern Israel. In the Middle East, their number is estimated at 1 million people, more than half of them in Lebanon, on Wadi El Taim and Mount Lebanon. More than 200,000 are in Syria, mostly in the Jebel el-Druze, the Druze mountain. In Israel, they number about 120,000, spread out between Golan Heights, Galilee, and Mount Carmel. This messianic and spiritual community speaks the same language, Arabic, and shares a 5-color flag. Chosen during the reign of Caliph al-Hakim, each of the 5 colors represents one of the great cosmic principles: green for intelligence, red for the soul, yellow for speech, blue for the precedent, and white for the following. Born in Egypt in 996 AD, the Druze religion is the faith of Ismaili Muslims, but their unitary interpretation of Islam is considered heretic by mainstream Islam. The reason? Druze respect the Greeks Plato, Pythagoras, and Aristotle. They draw inspiration from ancient Egypt and from the Indian culture and synthesize 3 monotheistic religions. They even share the Christian dogma of God's manifestation. It's a doctrine that sets them apart from the Shiites and the Sunnis. Druze don't observe the 5 pillars of Islam. They don't fast during the month of Ramadan and don't pray in mosques. Their sacred book is not the Quran, but several books of wisdom. Nothing surprises them in the nickname Gerard de Nerval gave them, Islam's Freemasons. And some Druze are even famous, among them musician Farid El Atrash, an oud virtuoso. To this day, the sad singer is still an important figure in the Arab music world. Other famous Druze figures, the Druze politicians Kamal and Walid Jumblat, not only represent the interests of the Lebanese Druze community, but also founded and presided over the Lebanese Progressive Socialist Party. And surviving in Lebanon, Syria, and Israel is not an easy thing to do, but the Druze, this minority community, have adapted. With loyalty and tremendous devotion, they have adopted this ideology of the dominant majorities. And while waiting for better days, they have decided to serve the cause of the country they live in.
The main characteristic of the Druze is their religion, which is secret and known only to a very small group of the population. Muslim people do not consider the Druze to be Muslims. However, their religion diverged from Shiite Islam back in the 11th century. We are here in the Druze village of Asafia at the tomb of Abu Abdallah, who was among the founders of the Druze religion, and we'll hear more about him and their religion, as far as can be revealed, from Professor Sheikh Fadel Mansour joining us here. Thank you for coming. And I want to start with a question: who is Abu Abdallah?
One of 5 persons who were preaching the message of Jethro. The message of Jethro was in 3 main values. First of all, monotheism. Second, this is God-fearing. And third is social justice. This is the main values that Jethro was preaching upon.
And this goes back to the 11th century?
It goes back to the 11th century, but Jethro was 3,300 years ago. And his message was passed through Judaism, then to Christianity, then to Islam.
So Sheikh Mansour,
and we are offshoot of Islam.
So tell us what differentiates the Druze religion from Islam, mainstream Islam.
We consider ourselves as Muslims, but we interpret the pillars of Islam in different way.
For example?
For example, you see jihad. What is jihad? It is God's striving. We believe that jihad, it is a struggle between the mind and the instinct. This is the main.
It's an inner jihad.
Exactly, the inner. It is mean, for instance, Psalm, fasting. It's not to fast from food. We like to eat, you see. It's to fast from all bad things that God has said not to do.
So we understand that the religion itself is a secret, but who gets to be exposed?
People who want to be a Druze or a religious Druze, he should pass a course of at least 3 months. He will come to the Khilwa, the place where we pray, and to prove upon himself that he is qualified to be a religious. He should be far away from 7 major sins. The first is lying, murder, fornication, stealing, harming others, and alcoholic and bad things that harm the mind and the soul and the body.
Can you explain to us the concept of reincarnation in the Druze belief?
Yeah, reincarnation is a transmigration of souls from one body to another body, from man to man, women to women, and no crossing should be. And it is simplify the justice of God. Because, for instance, a boy was born, and after 2 years he was died. So how can God calculate him? So we believe that reincarnation, it is written in the Bible and written in the New Testament and in the Quran. But we interpret the sentences in different way.
Interesting. And we know that you celebrate certain Muslim holidays like Eid al-Adha, for example.
Yeah.
What other traditions are special to the Druze religion?
The Druze, they don't care for ritualistic things, you see. It is spiritual. So the Adha, it is a sacrificing. It is to remind man or people what is to sacrifice and how we get to be close to God. This is the main thing.
Druze people reside primarily here in Israel, in Lebanon, in Syria, and also in Jordan. And we know that they don't have the unity upon nationalism.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to religion, is the religion the same in all these countries for the Druze?
The religion is the same in all these countries. And we are commanded to be loyal to each country where we live. For instance, Israelis are loyal to Israel. Syrians are loyal to Syria. Lebanon are loyal to Lebanon. So we believe in faith. You know what is faith? It is in Quran in Hebrew. It means that the moment of birth and the moment of death and the moment of divorce is fixed.
Now I'm relaxed.
Exactly, that's what we feel.
I want to ask you one more question about women in the Druze religion.
Yeah.
Are women religious?
Women, of course, are religious, and the only belief that gave the women equality is the Druze religion. It is not in the Judaism, it is not in the Christianity, it is not in the Islam and the Islamic 6 others, and the only religion that gives the women the right to divorce her husband. And we are, you see, if you are rich, you should not have more than 4 children, and the best is 2 children, and the 2 children should be spaced in 4 at 5 years, and the mother should milk her child for 2 years.
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
now I'm considering to convert. Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you for you.
Sheikh Fadel Mansour.
Okay.
Although all all Druze living in different countries share common traditions and a religion, there is a big question mark over the Druze national identity. Of the 20,000 Druze living in the Israeli Golan Heights, only a couple of hundreds have accepted Israeli citizenship since it was first offered in 1981. Others have openly sworn alliance to Syria and remained loyal to its embattled President Bashar Assad ever since Israel captured this territory in the War of 1967. This next report by I-24 News' David Gomba recaps the story of their complex identity.
The Golan Druze, so close to the Syrian conflict. A peaceful village lies on the foothills of Mount Hermon, Majd al-Shams. It's a large village, 10,000 inhabitants, and it is the capital of the Golan Druze. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, the Israeli army conquered the Golan Plateau and reached the top of Mount Hermon. The new border then cut the local Druze community in two. On the eastern side, Syria. On the western side, Israel. The border is located at the very extremity of Majd al-Shams and completely changed the lives of the villagers.
All these lands that you can see, these lands used to belong to Majd al-Shams villagers. They left them in 1967.
Dolan Abu Salah, Majd al-Shams's mayor, tells us that the bonds the villagers share with their relatives on the other side of the border are still very strong.
Our relations with the Druze villages on the other side have never ceased. Obviously, a lot of families, the majority of families in Majd al-Shams, and usually the families living on the Golan Plateau, have relatives on the other side.
The barbed wire separating the two countries are only a few meters away, and there's also a hillock called the Screaming Hill.
At that time, the Druze who lived on the other side used to come up and call for their relatives in Majd al-Shams. We would ask them, "Who are you looking for?" And they'd answer, "I'm looking for that person. Tell him I'm here." And that's how it would work.
2011. With the Arab Spring, Syrians protested, calling for the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. Quickly, the protests descended into civil war. The Syrian part of the Golan became a battlefield where Assad's army and its opponents, mostly the al-Nusra Front, would fight.
Most of Majd al-Shams inhabitants look at what is going on in Syria in a very human way. They have put the religious part of the conflict aside.
Last year, young people from the village attacked an ambulance transporting wounded al-Nusra fighters who came from the Syrian front. They couldn't understand why terrorists would be treated in Israel. Among the Golan Druze, the question of whether or not to support Bashar al-Assad's regime is a sensitive issue. Indeed, their loyalty to the current power at play seems to be anchored deep in the Druze tradition. The former generation, the one who lived through the annexation of the Golan, has remained for the most part loyal to Bashar al-Assad's Syria, like Nazi Ibrahim, a supporter of the regime.
First of all, we are all residents of the Golan Heights. Since back then, our citizenship has been Syrian, and the ground is Syrian too.
He told us about the riots of 1982, when the Jewish state tried to force Israeli citizenship on them right after annexing the Golan Heights.
They didn't listen to us, so we decided to go on strike for 6 months. They tried a lot of things, cutting off our water supply or preventing food provisions. All of that so that we would take Israeli citizenship. We refused. We remained Syrian. In the end, the army gave in.
As he showed us his house, he proudly showed off the portraits of his relatives posting next to the Syrian president. About the neighboring conflict, he denounced the foreign intrusion in Syria. He also praised the welfare state of the Alawite regime, which favors the minorities. Today still, Syria offers the young Golan Druze the possibility to study free of charge at the University of Damascus. The same young people who experience the Syrian conflict from inside the country and who, for the most part, don't support the Syrian regime as they used to. Yet they refuse to speak in front of our cameras for fear of retaliation against their families in Syria. Firas came back from Damascus, where he finished his studies 2 years ago. Although he agreed to talk to us anonymously, he still remained pretty neutral.
Yes, there is a change in our generation, a change of culture and the way of thinking. There are people who support Assad's regime and people who are opposed to it. Everyone has his own state of mind, his own way of seeing things. Only living in peace matters, whether you're Arab, Muslim, Druze, or Christian. There, in Syria, it's a matter of life and death.
Old or new generation, pro or anti-Assad, the war in Syria has managed to divide the residents of this village. Residents who were proudly united until then, a division in the image of the Druze community between tradition and modernity.
And that is all from Middle East Focus for today. Next week we'll be back for sure with more stories from the region. Thank you for joining us here in the north of Israel today. See you soon.